Well, g'day, it's Jonathan Brake here. I hope you're doing well, and it's a beautiful sunny summer afternoon. And I thought I'd just share some stuff. I today got to do a bit of a conversation with a client, and we talked about motivation, what makes it up, and how you actually build motivation. And so, what I'm going to do is just going to give you a quick rundown on what we discussed, and then go from there. So let's just sort of look at motivation first. Okay, so what is it? And it really is that reason for taking action on something. Okay, and so what are the reasons that you get out of bed in the morning? What's the reason? Sometimes it's just to get out of bed and face the day. Sometimes it's, well, if you don't get up, you need to go to the bathroom. There's motivation everywhere. So what are the reasons that you need to do things? It's that general willingness or desire to do something. So when we're motivated, there's kind of this thing that we actually want to do that as well. And so that's also tied up with it as well. And what it does is then it initiates and it guides our behavior, okay? And so we start to see that it has all these different effects in terms of how we set goals, how we behave, the way we go about things. It also involves forces that are, that are human, that are biological, that are social, maybe they're even emotional, but definitely cognitive. And this is the one I see the most in motivation, is how we think through things and how do we motivate ourselves to get things done. So in my understanding, there are 4 basic kinds of motivation. The first one, extrinsic motivation. So that's motivation that comes from outside of us. So for example, a lot of employment systems are set up to be extrinsic. You come to work, you earn money, and then you go home. Now, interestingly enough, we could talk about this in intrinsic motivation as well, but it's not always the primary motivator of a person, but at the end of the day, it is extrinsic motivation. It's something that sits outside of us. It's something else or somebody else coercing us or motivating us to succeed. And so we do it because we're compelled to. We do it because sometimes we're impelled to. For example, we're told to by someone, or we're shown what has to happen. The simple internal stuff, okay? So what's going on internally? How am I motivated? How do I do what I do? Okay. And so intrinsic motivation is more about the simple internal pleasure of doing something. They're often driven by personal values, by desires, by belief systems, whatever it might be. It's funny when people say, well, why aren't my people motivated enough? I said, well, what's their why for showing up? Because often that's the piece that's missing in terms of understanding how they're motivated. The third one is what we call interjected motivation. So this one's an interesting one because it actually is intrinsic, it's internal, but it's driven more by fear and guilt. Okay, it's driven more by this, if I don't do it, I'm going to feel bad, all that sort of thing. And so, as you can understand by that has a certain shelf life, and we can't continue to motivate ourselves that way. And so it'll only go so far. The last one is identified motivation. And so this is where the person knows they have to do something, but they haven't done it yet. Okay, and this one could be an interesting one because often what we do is we get offended when we have an intention, let's call it intentional, we have an intention to do something, we haven't done it yet, but then people start judging us based on what they see, what actually actions that are taking place. So if they can't see our intentions, they can't hear our intentions, then they can't hear what our identified motivation is, and they can't join in that process. So often identified motivation leads us to extrinsic or intrinsic motivation, where we actually take action on stuff. So there might be outside influences, there might be inside influences. Once I understand those things about motivation, how do I actually drive it? Well, I've got 12 things I would like to kind of throw out there. So ultimately, motivation is about your own choice, okay? No one can do it for you, no one can show up for you. But let's talk about what these 12 things are. You first of all need to be clear on why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you getting out of bed every day? What excites you? What's my big picture? What's my why? And if you don't know what that is, you need to really think hard about that. And why is it that you matter? Okay, because everybody does matter and everybody has a purpose. We're designed that way. Maybe within your why, and I've had this happen a few times, I've got a very clear why to transform the nations, one business at a time, to transform the world of the next person that I meet, okay? Now the how sometimes needs some work. That's through different businesses, through different expressions, through different places. And so I'm often transforming the how, but it's amazing how quickly the how can transform and how the how comes alive in that. Maybe your how needs some work, and maybe that's where you're losing some motivation. You're feeling a bit lost right now. Sometimes you just need to capture feelings in a moment. So I remember when I did this and I felt that. So one of the examples I used this morning was riding my mountain bike. And when I'm getting to those last 3 or 4 miles out of I might be at mile 10 or 11, and I'm now down to the last 2, 3, 4 miles, and I'm starting to feel pretty tired, and I'm feeling like a lot of uphill. I don't know if I can make it. I'll get off the bike and walk or whatever, and I'll feel like that's a compromise. And what I'll remember is what it feels like to ride back to the car, to get in the car and to have that drink of cold water that I always store in the car for after my ride, and the feeling of just what an amazing accomplishment. And that usually is enough to spur me on, along with my trail song, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So set goals and celebrate victories. This is a big one. If we're going to set goals, we've got to celebrate the fact that when we achieve them, we do celebrate them and not just move the goalposts, okay? That's a big one. Do you need to shift into the future for a moment? Sometimes positioning yourself and being able to see the end game, playing a videotape of what it might look like in the future will really help you understand that. Have you got good people around you? Okay, we're up to number 6 now, by the way. Do you have, we're up to number 7. I jumped number 6. Do you have good people around you? Are they going to remind you? They don't have to be people you know. They could be people that you just like listening to, but it could be a coach, or it could be a boss, it could be a spouse, it could be even one of your children. Do you have that right person around you that's going to really motivate you? Coming back to number 6, do you have your favorite songs on a playlist? Okay, music is amazingly energizing and motivating. So do you have your favorite songs on a playlist? Always associate the end outcome with pleasure. Okay, now this is one of the big challenges is that as human beings, we're designed to move towards pleasure and avoid pain. So if you can associate the end outcome with pleasure, and this is often the challenges with things like diets and things like that, is we always associate dieting with pain and something really hard and not fun. So if you can associate that with pleasure, then there's a much better outcome for you. The reason that is often because when we do find something pleasurable and rewarding, we get a hit of dopamine, and that makes us feel good, and you can look that up. Take control of your personal habits: eating, sleeping, socializing, connecting with people, dieting, whatever it might be. Take control of those things and really work those to your advantage. Maintain healthy relationships. This can be an interesting one because there is the people that speak into your life, but there are also the people you just hang out with that are going to either help or hinder you getting to where you need to go. And so you just need to manage people carefully around that. Always look for ways to grow and contribute. So how are you developing yourself, your learning and your growth? And then how are you contributing out as well? Okay, what are you giving away that then creates space for you to be able to take in more and do more? There's no doubt that people who are generous with their time, generous with their money, generous with their resources are way more fulfilled in life than people who just take everything. Okay, so think about that. And then the last one here is learn to ask better questions. One of the things that really drives motivation is that ability to gain insight, because the insight basically takes unconscious, brings it into the subconscious, and then brings it forward into the conscious. It's stuff that was already there, but it brings it forward so you actually pay attention to it, you actually see it. And out of that, you then are motivated to take action. So always be asking the right questions, good questions. If the questions aren't landing where you need to, look at the questioning and how you can fix that, okay? So that's always going to be the last one. So there are 12 things that I think you could think about in terms of how can you build motivation, how can I motivate my team more? Obviously not all 12 at once, but pick on those things that maybe you need to improve, maybe you could do better, maybe you and your team could discuss these are the ways we're most motivated. If any of that's resonated with you, if you need help talking through that, or your team needs help discovering motivation and how to do more of that, I would love to talk with you. It's just a bit of time, so it would be great to have a chat and see how I could even help you build a really motivated and really high-performing team. I'm Jonathan Brake. As always, enjoy the journey.